Reports today that Al Jazeera English, having just bought Al Gore's Current TV, is now planning a major expansion right here in the USA, changing its name to Al Jazeera America and building a broadcast center in Washington, D.C. with plans for bureaus in at least 8 major American cities. This is an offshoot of the same network that was accused of promoting terrorism after 9/11, airing videos of Osama bin Laden, among many other incidents. Joining me now, Lisa Daftari. She's a Mideast journalist and a Fox News contributor, and Guy Benson, who's a radio talk show host and political editor of townhall.com. So, Lisa, do you have any beef with this?
Well, you know, this is what we expected. We knew they took over the platform. That's the only thing that they were lacking. They are, you know, and they're going to be able to push their way through because there's no other outlet that's providing foreign news. So the audience that is looking for this type of coverage is going to be watching. And they're expanding. You know, we're not in the same days that followed 9/11 where the New York Times came out only a month after the 9/11 attacks and criticized Al Jazeera and said, you know, why are you airing these videos and why are you promoting this terrorist agenda? Now it's actually considered Islamophobic if you're going to be criticizing Al Jazeera. So they're going to play upon that and they're going to feed right into this where the left is completely going to support them and allow them to have a voice.
Well, starting with our former vice president, who's cleared the path for their meaningful entry into the U.S. market. Guy, they've been trying to gain a foothold here since 2006, and it's been an abysmal failure. I mean, they haven't been able to get the distribution. You got to get companies like Time Warner Cable and Comcast to carry you, and they have not succeeded in doing a very good job of that. The purchase of Current TV helps a lot. We'll see whether they get carried as Al Jazeera America. But their bosses say, look, they will be entirely editorially separate from the more controversial sister network, Al Jazeera Arabic.
Right. So, first of all, I think it's worth pointing out again that the acquisition of Current TV was a deal just flush with ironies. And I think that we've had a few chuckles over that. But you're absolutely right. The practical implication is, Megyn, for the first time ever, tens of millions of Americans will have access to this new network, essentially, and will be perhaps judging its product afresh or anew. And so, look, I'm generally a fan of free speech, the free press, and free markets. So I'm not willing to jump down Al Jazeera America's throat just yet. I'm willing to reserve judgment and take a look at their programming. But I think they have a pretty high bar to clear with the American public if they're going to ever attain anything other than third-tier irrelevant status.
I mean, the controversy with the sister network, Lisa, was and is significant. I mean, not just the airing of the bin Laden videos after 9/11, but they suggested that the Jews had been given a heads up in the World Trade Center prior to the bombing. I mean, it was crazy stuff that aired on the sister network, Al Jazeera Arabic. And I mean, from our State Department to the New York Times, we're criticizing Al Jazeera Arabic. So now comes the Al Jazeera English, now going to be Al Jazeera America. And it has not been without criticism either. I mean, there was a well-known Nightline correspondent that went to work for Al Jazeera English, and he quit, citing in part his belief that there's a real anti-American bias there, and yet they're about to infiltrate America.
Right. Well, the point is they want to differentiate themselves from their, you know, sister network, but at the same time, I mean, it's the same thing. They're having the same type of coverage. Apparently they're expanding to 8 cities. One of them being Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan is a large expat community of Muslim Americans where sleeper cells have been detected. You can Google this. You can find out all this information. So if you're trying to really set yourself apart, the Qatari petrodollars are still backing this network. You're still developing in an area where these sleeper cells were detected. I mean, they're going to have to do much more to prove to me that they're very different from the sister network.
What kind of an appetite do you think there's going to be for this guy? Because one of the executives behind it says that he believes the animosity toward even the Al Jazeera Arabic has waned and that they have a real shot at establishing a successful commercial foothold.
Yeah, we'll see about that. And again, I think it comes back to it's not just what Al Jazeera did in the wake of 9/11 and the years, for example, during the Iraq War, when I think they were justifiably accused of anti-American and frequent anti-Israel sentiment and reporting. I think even more recently, like one of the most popular shows on the Arabic version of Al Jazeera is a show called Sharia and Life, the host of which has called the Holocaust, quote, divine punishment for the Jews, and has endorsed a number of fatwas against Western figures. So, look, I think that if Americans are going to buy into Al Jazeera America as a legitimate source for foreign and international news, they're going to have to ask the questions, A, to what extent does this supposedly editorially independent entity actually separate itself from its very controversial sister network? And secondly, what influence will the bankrollers have? The bankrollers, of course, being the government of Qatar, which is an Arabic authoritarian monarchy, which, among other things, censors the internet in their country and jails journalists. I mean, these are legitimate questions that I think American consumers will have to ask.
But it's a good question, because you can't necessarily tar Al Jazeera America with the sins of Al Jazeera Arabic. I mean, just because they're sister corporations doesn't mean they're going to make the same decisions. They need to be judged on their own merit, and they have some questions in their past, but now we'll see. Now we'll see how they do going forward. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, Megyn.